Well, hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast. I'm Tom Rennie. Alongside me, virtually, spiritually, and occasionally physically, is your friend of mine, Apple TV Plus star. It's Brian Dunseth. How are you, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm out of the deep frozen of Colorado. Denver was cold, my man. Cold. Windy. I guess there's a positive. The prairie dogs are nice and healthy. There's no more prairie dog plague that I'm aware of. That did transpire a few years ago. Last time I was out at Dick's Sporting Goods Park in Colorado.
What?
The prairie dog plague. They were dropping left and right. It was sad. These little beautiful creatures that are, as you're driving up to the stadium, they're just on the side of the road. They're in the fields. They're popping up. They're looking around. They're chewing.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what a prairie dog?
Like? No.
You got to look it up. I'll explain it, but you look it up since you're in front of a computer and we have this thing called technology. Yeah, Rennie, they kind of look like.
Oh
no, they're beautiful.
It's like a fat rat.
It's bigger than a rat. Yes. They do gnaw on things. They're chewing. They're out there in the fields. They burrow.
Why were they dying? For the good of everybody.
It was a plague. It was a prairie dog plague. They were suffering.
Why are you saying plague? You mean plague, like the Black Death?
Let me do what Tom Rennie does. Plague.
Again, plague. Plague.
Plague. Somehow
not
you're Australian.
Plague. Not plague, like peg.
The plague.
Like PEG.
It's the plague. The plague. Plague. Prairie dog plague.
Plague.
There's the voice of God and reason sometimes on this show.
So you've been killing prairie dogs in Denver, basically, is what you've been up to.
Well, no, I did not. But Max Brados, my partner in crime on these Apple TV MLS broadcasts, told me a story about he and his son looking out the window and some guy running over two prairie dogs, and they went, and he and his son both started crying at the same exact time. So I personally did not commit an act of murder against prairie dogs, but I did hear a story, and it was sad.
How was your weekend, Danny? Well, I didn't kill anything, so that's good, I think. We'll ask further MLS questions later in the program, but I do want to get to a couple of top stories this week, which are really, really interesting, Danny. I think you and I need to be shoveling down. Would it be humble pie if you were wrong? Mistake pie? Error pie? What's the appropriate thing to stuff down one's own gullet when you've been proven comprehensively wrong? Prairie dog cake. We basically both need to eat a large helping of prairie dog cake, or as you would call it, keg, because we both thought Antonio Conte would be excellent at Tottenham Hotspur. And I remember vividly you and I doing a Week in the Tackle, a year or so ago, saying that Antonio Conte would be terrific as manager of Manchester United. And we were saying, this is me doing it. I'll do you. This is your voice. I can't believe that Manchester United have put a plague on their own house by not picking Antonio Conte to be their manager, and they picked this Eric Ten Hager. Like, who is this guy? You got a proven winner in Antonio Conte, and yet, et cetera, et cetera. You get the gist of that now. Antonio Conte, he's not sacked as we speak. As you and I record the program right now on kind of late Tuesday UK time, early Tuesday your time, Mountain time, he's not gone yet. But I'm sure everyone listening to this has seen it. The incredible meltdown that he had after the draw against Southampton, 3-1 up to draw 3-3 against bottom of the league. We won't play the whole thing here. But he says, quote, I see selfish players. I see players that don't want to help each other and don't put the heart in. Why? Because they're used to it here. They're used to it. They don't play for something important, yeah? They don't want to play under pressure. They don't want to play under stress. It's easy in this way. Tottenham's story is this. 20 years, there is the owner, and they never won something. Why? The fault is only for the club and for every manager that stays here. It does go on, but Antonio Conte, what's gone wrong at Tottenham? Well, it's him and you and that and this and her and the dog and the prairie dogs, and I imagine someone in Denver's fault and the ice cream man and the milkman. Not me though. Danny, thoughts?
Yeah, I think this was as explosive of a napalm bomb that Antonio Conte could have dropped in his post-game presser. And again, I have a little bit of sympathy for the manager. I do, because I think in a way, the touch points that he was touching
and pointing to
were factual. I mean, he dropped a lot of facts, right? But there's facts and there's reality. And sometimes those get skewed. And I think you can absolutely point to the history of the club and point out what all the jokes have been about Tottenham, right? And that's okay if you're everybody else other than the manager of Tottenham. And then you get into the point where this is a manager in his year and a half, 2-year stint that on multiple occasions has said publicly that this team is a mid-table team. This squad is a mid-table squad. And has been given extraordinary amounts of money to pick the players, along with Paratici, that he wanted to help build this club into a stable performer and a stable winner. The word project gets tossed around quite a bit, but I would say there's a regeneration of squads that are absolutely needed.
This wasn't a project, Danny, though, was it?
No,
This was never a project.
No, it was a need of strengthening, which had been in play since the building of this stadium, since the lack of investment from Daniel Levy and the decision makers, all the way back to Pochettino's squad after they made it to a Champions League final and they had consistent second and third place finishes.
That was a project. And Pochettino had a project. This Antonio Conte was a round of shots. He wasn't
he was brought in to win.
Yes.
He was not just brought in to compete for trophies. He was brought in to win trophies. And you even go back to before the hiring of Nuno Espirito Santo. It's a long time ago.
I forgot him, earlier. I forgot he existed.
It was manager of the month, and then he was sacked 3 weeks later.
Someone said to me, name the last 5 Tottenham managers, which actually I'm going to do to you in a minute. And I was, could not recall him at all.
So you think about, okay, historical reference points, factual statements, and then calling everybody out. Listen, you look back at the last 6 months that Antonio Conte has had. He's lost a lot of really close personal friends. And I'm super sympathetic for the grieving process of somebody going through losing 3 very, very close people in his life. But at a certain point, we judge managers based on results. We judge managers based on his starting 11. We judge managers based on his management of the game. We judge managers by their tactical adjustments. We judge managers by their substitution patterns, and ultimately we judge them by the results. And one thing we constantly say, not just us, everybody says, it's that one question. Does he make the squad better? Does he make the players better? And if you can swallow a certain style of play that isn't always the most eyeball pleasing, you can say that Antonio Conte has made the team better, reasonably better.
Can you?
But when they don't perform and they don't turn up, or they give up leads like they did against Southampton, all of a sudden it's everybody else's fault. And for all of this, he just threw the players under the bus. No, he threw the ownership under the bus. He threw the directors under the bus. He threw everybody above and below him under the bus, because it's not me. Look at my record. I've won everywhere I've gone. I deliver trophies. This group, I want to suffer. I want to fight. I want to have the mentality of pressure. Not this team. Look at what they do. No, not for me.
Is that fair, Danny, for him to do that, considering that he's been in charge at a Carabao Cup semi-final against Chelsea? He's been in charge when they lost to NS Mura in the Conference League, then couldn't compete in the Conference League because I can't remember the silly reason now, wasn't it COVID and they couldn't rearrange it? He's the manager who has got them eliminated from the Champions League in a home tie against Milan because they couldn't score a home goal with Harry Kane up front against Milan. I mean, That's been failures, but aren't they his failures?
It's deflection 101. Again, it's deflection 101, because and you've got two different people, right? You've got Antonio Conte on the sideline, And in the training field, that is explosive and bombastic and very, I think, very driven to get what he wants out of the players. And then you have Antonio Conte in the press conferences or doing the interviews, and a very different person, very calm, very cool, very collected, knows exactly what he's doing. He's trying to push the buttons. He is very good at giving the answer to the question that wasn't necessarily asked. And I've always been intrigued by how he does that, because they'll be like, they'll be asked the point of question. Yes, but you must think about, and he'll go off into a completely different direction and get to whatever bullet point he wants out there publicly. So obviously something broke. It wasn't just the result. This is the, whatever this last result stirred inside of Antonio Conte was the moment in which he felt like gloves are off. I'm going to come out firing, and he's speaking his version of the truth. Whatever his version of the truth is, that is exactly what we heard during that press conference. And I would say the 3 to 4 interviews before we even got to the press conference, because it felt like all of the interviews that I saw before that, he was amping up. And at that point, he couldn't help himself. He was
winding himself up massively as the interviews went on.
So now we get into the conversation of, is it a sackable offense? It depends on Daniel Levy and everybody at ENIC that then says, screw this guy. I don't care what the payout is. I don't care what we owe him. He's out. But money is a conversation. I don't care what anybody says. Whatever Joe Louis and Daniel Levy decide, then take to the board, and the board has, approves or denies or whatever, justifies. That's fine. But don't think for a second there's not a conversation about eating money, because I've never seen a point where this club is willing, more than capable, but willing to eat unnecessary money if they don't have to.
I mean, a few points on this. Firstly, can we get him scanned? Can we get the body scanned? Because does anyone else have just a little bit of doubt that he actually didn't have his gallbladder removed and he just ready to get away from Tottenham? And this was all a cunning, I'm sick, can't go to school, or Mummy, I've got a tummy ache kind of thing. And he was just trying to keep away from the club. That first bit was a joke, so don't at me about that one. The second part of this is that he was so desperate to get away this week. He's not taking training this week. Whatever happened, he got a Ryanair flight. Now, if you don't know Ryanair, I suppose your equivalent, Danny, might be Spirit Airlines.
Yeah.
Which I hear about on the late night talk shows. There was a brief period on Ryanair, and I don't know if it's still true, they were going to charge you to use the toilet. So the flight itself would be like £30 in taxes, but £1 for the flight. But on the flight, it was like, do you want a pillow, sir? That's €2. Do you want to urinate? That's €3. Do you want to take a poo-poo? That's €5. Toilet paper, sir? That's €10. Flush the chain? That's €1. That was there. And he got on that airline to get, sorry, Tim, the away from Tottenham this week, which was terrific. Again, that's another joke. Don't at me, but feel free to enjoy. The other element to this, Danny, and I want to talk a bit about this, is, and it goes to your point there, is it a sackable offence? Because again, that's about what's in the contract, what's not in the contract. Is there an element to the contract about representing Tottenham Hotspur publicly?
Club and disrepute,
all that stuff. I mean, I don't know what's in there and what's not. We don't. We'll find out if he gets sacked or not. And if he gets sacked in one way, he's owed X compensation, another way, Y compensation. So currently we don't know that. We'll look into it. We'll find out. We'll talk about it again. But I want to ask you what's so bad, because what he says here, right? I want to disregard that's the history of Tottenham kind of Chiellini thing, because I think he'd revved himself up into a frenzy by that point and was just shooting off like The Rock in 2003, right? He's just pow, 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 pow. It doesn't matter what your name is, right? That's where he is. But the players. I think he's achieved what I'd expect with these players. I think if you look at the league leaders, Arsenal, which Tottenham players are good enough to get in the Arsenal squad, not team squad? And I think the answer is, and again, feel free to come back at me, you or anyone listening, the players are Harry Kane, Dejan Kulusevski, Heung-min Son, and Rodrigo Bentancur. I think they get in the Arsenal squad. And I think Harry Kane gets in the Arsenal team. We can talk about the others. And, we can have a debate about Martinelli or Son or whatever. But I'm just saying they're very good players, good enough to play for the league leaders, right? The others, they're pretty decent professional footballers, mid-table players, top 6 players, top 8 players. They ain't top 4 players where they are. They're currently sitting in 4th in a battle for the Champions League for next season. They got to the round of 16 in the Champions League. That's about what I'd expect. They haven't superseded my expectations, but they've achieved my expectations. So I don't think there's much conversation to be had there about what he has or hasn't done, what these players have done or haven't done. But what about this whole thing about saying, if we're going to get more out of you, you've got to be less selfish. You've got to do this, that, or the other. How much, to take it into the microcosm of the Southampton game, was it the players' fault they went from 1-3 to 3-3? How much was it the coach's fault? And how much was it their selfishness or their lack of quality? What do you make to that?
Well, there's a lot of bullet points to cover there. I think Antonio Conte is extremely rigid with the way that he sees football. Much in the same manner we talk about Pep Guardiola and the way that he sees football, and it doesn't matter if you win, doesn't matter if you lose. There's a certain eyeball test that has to be passed for Pep Guardiola to be happy, right? How many times have we heard those stories? I think when we talk about the rigidity of Antonio Conte's system, there could be, I think, a conversation to say, well, at what point are you responsible for not recognizing the weaknesses in your team and trying to subsequently adjust your playing style to what the strengths or the weaknesses of the opponent? You go back last year. There was a moment when Antonio Conte said publicly that this Spurs team is a mid-table team. I think it was like a week later, they go and beat Man City away 4-3. And then a week after that, they lose to Burnley. So you can talk about mentality monsters. You can talk about consistency of performances as much as you want. But I think with the game being where it's at in 2023, there's also a conversation to be had about managers recognizing how to adjust their systems. And I'm not suggesting that he doesn't at times, but he most certainly prefers the system that he's playing right now with the 3 in the back, the 2 outside wing backs, the 2 holding guys in the middle, 2 attacking players underneath Harry Kane. And you can insert names here, or you can subtract names here or there, but it's mostly the same, right? At the end of the day, the manager is responsible for training sessions, for the motivations, for the tactics, and for the preparation for the game. Up until that whistle blows, and picking the players, up until that whistle blows, then it is up to the players. It's the responsibility for the first 45 minutes solely on the players, outside of Richarlison going down with injury early, which that does hurt Tottenham Hotspur. Second half, not only at halftime, but then in the second half, the adjustments that were made, what the words are used at halftime, and then the substitution patterns to either win a game, control a game, or chase a game. That's all on Conte as well. Players are the ones that control the field of play, but Conte has an element of control as well. So if, and this is just me, if you are going to lambaste your team publicly afterwards, well, at some point he has to take responsibility. But I don't feel as though with his reaction and kind of these data points throughout his time at Tottenham that he is willing to take on the responsibility of, I know we use project too much, but this regeneration of a squad, the continued regeneration of the squad, there has to be an element of responsibility for not. And again, you're so right, because we're talking about teams that are punching above their weight. We're talking about teams that have built squads that are in the prime, and we're watching teams that maybe aren't in their prime, that are struggling, Liverpool, trying to figure out who they are going to be in this next regeneration of their squad. But I did expect more from Conte, because I've always felt like Conte had that little extra touch to him that saw him have the results that he's had at Chelsea and at Inter Milan previously. But I also understand that comes with a weight. And the weight is that, again, I'll go for the last couple of squads that he's had. You feel like there's a window of 2.5, 3 years in which he's going to burn these guys to the ground. And I think what he's done in this press conference has taken it a step too far. He's going to have guys that are loyal to him inside that locker room, but he's also going to have guys that say, we're done with you.
I do want to move on to the other weird management story this week. As we record, Antonio Conte remains manager. And I'll just say this final point. I'd love to see him stay. I would love him to come back on a Ryanair flight next week and just be like, all right, guys, sorry about that. Whoopsies. Do you know what? I was revved. I was super revved. I've seen Højbjerg reference it, saying like, oh, he gave a very open interview. I'm interested to see what he's got to say about it. Come back and Levy be like, how much we pay you a year? Oh, it's a 15 million. And Levy's like, because he smokes now.
Yeah.
That's for the visual. People watching on YouTube are going to enjoy this. Yeah, come back and do your job, mate. Finish fourth for you. Cheers, pal. And they can think about the future later. There's no time for a project now. 2 months to go. It's panic stations. Achieve fourth and earn your money. I want to move on to Crystal Palace because I couldn't quite believe this story. I can believe Patrick Vieira got the sack. I'd heard lots of things about Patrick Vieira. Things I can't say on here, things I can say on here. And a very quiet man, a man who perhaps had lost grip of what was happening at Crystal Palace. The results have been awful. No wins in 2023. I think just 4 goals scored and a couple of draws since the turn of the year. Yes, they've only played teams in the top half of the table. And yes, it's been a difficult run of fixtures. And yes, the next 6 are all against teams in that relegation run. So April going to be crucial for Crystal Palace, though they are only, I think, 5 points off bottom and 3 points off the relegation zone. And are very much in the 8 or 9 team battle. But I can see why he left because they've been so terrible. But Roy Hodgson coming in to replace him. I've got to tell you, there are managers this year I think probably could have gone. And there are managers this year who probably should have gone. There are managers this year who probably shouldn't have gone, but have for whatever reason. Maybe they had a Ryanair flight waiting. I don't know. But to go to Roy Hodgson, a friend of Sirius XMFC, we've interviewed Roy.
Yeah.
He's a lovely guy and an incredible career. Something we'll get to in a minute. But I mean, he took Watford down last season. And when he took Watford down, everyone who spoke to him, I went to a couple of games where he was in charge of and went to the press conference. I have colleagues that spoke to him directly. Everyone was like, no, he weren't up for that. He was not up for that at all. And the players report, he wasn't buying it. They weren't buying it. And his record at Watford was 18 games, 2 victories, 13 defeats, only 11 goals scored in that time. And his Palace team in his final season were kind of infamous for being incredibly dull and they couldn't score goals. That's why they brought Vieira in. So Dunny, to go to Roy in semi-retirement, having taken Watford down last season to replace the manager who replaced him because of all the current failings of Crystal Palace, which they still have, I actually can't believe it. I mean, it's pure panic, isn't it? What do you make to this?
Well, Steve Parish obviously trusts him, and there's a fantastic relationship. I think everybody acknowledges that it was handshakes all around following his tenure coming to an end at Palace. And I think it's a safety blanket. I mean, more than anything, it's just a safety blanket. And how much, I mean, you look at it at this stage in his life, did he need to come back? No. Should he have come back? To be determined. Is it the right move? Again, to be determined. But there's a sense of loyalty on both sides, right? There's loyalty. I think there's respect, and I think there's an understanding of help us navigate this. Who's the best to do it? Probably one of the guys that knows us best, if not the best. And when you're talking about Zaha and you're talking about some of the younger players, Mitchell and some the guys that he has kind of brought through over the years, well, then maybe he is the right guy for some of these youngsters that he can maybe potentially get the best out of. So was not surprised when his name was linked. I got to be honest with you. No, I wasn't. Because who we're seeing the Deitch effect, right? We're seeing the Deitch effect at Everton. And I think when you are thinking about bringing in a quote unquote firefighter, right? Because that's essentially what it is right now. Because we've never, I don't know if I say we've never seen this, but it's been a long time since we've seen this many teams from 12th to 20th with a 4-point difference at this stage of the season.
Oh, it's never happened. This has never happened in Premier League history. This gap, never.
So I didn't want to overstep my steps there, but you need someone that can have a feel good factor, and I think that no one is going to look at him and be angry about this appointment. No one's going to say, like, what are you doing bringing this guy in? There's already kind of an understanding with the players that are there of what the system was played. Even Vieira bringing in a couple extra players and setting up his own system. I think he can revert and figure out how to play as simply as possible to get the results. And I also think, listen, with deep regret parting ways with Patrick and the way it was verbalized, I think they also did him a service by, firing him when they did, because they knew they were going to get their doors blown off at Arsenal. And I don't think they wanted a situation where Patrick had to, have that type of public shaming, because they would have had to sack him afterwards, because then it would have been like, well, the players have absolutely quit on him. And we've got, since December without a win, and only would have snowballed from there. So everything makes sense to an extent, but now it's up to the players to start performing and how Roy gets the best out of them.
I got to say, Danny, I disagree with everything you just said. All of it. Yeah. Every element of it. I think sacking Patrick Vieira wasn't necessarily the worst thing to do, but to bring in Roy Hodgson is a monumental error, because Roy was a great manager, but he left Crystal Palace for a reason. A lot of those players no longer wanted to play for him. They stopped winning games. The tactics grew stale, and they were on a downward trajectory. There was no project there. They brought in Vieira to start a project, and the first time there's been peril, and I mean real peril, they're in real peril, Palace. They decided to sack him and go back to Roy Hodgson, a man who is in semi-retirement. So bored is Roy Hodgson right now. He went out for dinner with Rodney Marsh 2 weeks ago. Right? That's how bored Hodgson is. He loves to work. Some people do, right? So I think it's bizarre to bring him in here when there are players there that had enough of him previously, and I think it's kind of improved that some of the old ways aren't quite working right now for some of the older faces. And even Sean Dyche, you mentioned the revival there. It's not exactly been stratospheric for Everton since they brought in the corner and beat Tess Merchant. And Brendan Rodgers and David Moyes are finding that out down there as well. So I think there's a lack of any direction as a football club in this particular hire. I think Vieira deserved the opportunity to try and turn this around, considering those 6 fixtures, by the way. Here's their April. Leicester home, Leeds away, Southampton away, Everton home, Wolves away, West Ham home. 3 wins, safe. 2 wins, on the right track. 1 win, big trouble. No wins, I think they're going to go. And so to change right now is a monumental risk. There's a reason that people like Leicester and Forest and West Ham have stuck with their bosses. It's because Lopetegui and Emery went, and then they were like, oh, there's Roy Hodgson, Sam Allardyce, and this inanimate steel rod.
How dare you describe Lampard like that?
And of course, Ruben Sellers, who is every management consultant that ever came into your company, and said, have we tried turning the lights up and the air conditioning up, and maybe we can get people to work harder? Why don't we change the chairs in the lunchroom to stools? And if we do that, people are going to be more vibing in the office. That kind of prick that comes into every office in America at some point. Management consultant. We're not sure of them. We're not sure of them, guys. Ruben Sellers. So you can see why those clubs haven't changed, and maybe why Palace shouldn't have done. But those fixtures are there. But I'll tell you this other point on Crystal Palace. They're not very good. Like we spoke about the Tottenham squad earlier on. This is about where they should be. Yeah, Crystal Palace were always going to be in a relegation battle at this point in the season. Crystal Palace have been 12th after 28 games in each of the last 3 seasons. I could not be bothered to go back further, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be 12th at this stage every single year for the last 5 or 6 seasons. And look at the squad, right? We did it earlier on with Arsenal and with Tottenham. Let's look at the first team not in this scrap, Aston Villa. Which Crystal Palace players get in the Aston Villa squad? And Wilf Zaha, sure, absolutely, love him. Lost a bit of pace, but love him. What else? Elise, potentially, but is he better than Buendia? Is he better than Ramsey? I don't know. I think there's an argument. He might make the bench, probably. Eze at his best, but we barely see him. What else? Decore? No, he's a useless thug. Who else? Milivojevic can't run. Tarek Mitchell is rubbish. I cannot understand. You keep pushing him on me. He's useless. Nathaniel Klein? No. Anderson and Gay are like a centre half, but Tyrone Mings, is he the same level as Gay or probably? So maybe Anderson? What about Guaita? Well, no, they've got Emi Martinez. So again, you see what I'm saying here? It's not like they're going to make a great leap forward with the squad they've got. So it's a lower mid-table squad who should be in a relegation battle, and they're in a relegation battle. Bunch of winnable games coming up, and they've sacked the manager at a point where he can actually prove himself. It doesn't make sense. It strikes me as blind panic. And I can't see that Roy Hodgson is going to come in and bring any energy to the camp, considering what happened with Watford last year.
So do they stay up? I think they do.
I think they were more likely to stay up last week than today. I mean, looking at the relegation battle now and the fixtures and all that sort of stuff, I think Crystal Palace are more likely than not, right? I still think they are. But to be only 3 points above where West Ham are at the moment is troubling.
Yeah, for sure.
Massively troubling. And I think West Ham will climb out of it. I think Leicester will climb the table. And I think Everton will probably make it. The rest of them, I still don't know. I think there's wins there for a couple of those teams. But we'll see. I've been wrong about a lot of things. But I still think those three squads, with the quality of player, with the games that are left, I think they'll probably scramble to 35-36. Crystal Palace have got to win 3 games and get a couple of draws from 10. They haven't won in, I think, 12. And they've brought in old Father Time to save them. I don't know. I think they're less likely now than they were previously. I want to move on to something else, Danny, but before we do, I've got to do a couple of quick quizzes. Are you ready for a couple of quick quizzes?
Oh, boy. Here we go.
The first one, I actually don't know the answer to this, so we might have to do this together. And I haven't got it written down. So WD18 fans, I think it's a Watford fan group on Twitter. 25% of Premier League managers currently are ex-Watford managers. How many can you name? Let's go one by one. Name one and I'll do the other one. That means 5 of the 20 were once in charge of Watford.
Javi Gracia.
Roy Hodgson.
Oh, boy. Marco Silva.
Sean Dyche.
Did Dyche? Oh, that's right. Dyche. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Eddie Howe wasn't there.
No. Klopp?
Ooh.
Oh, it's Rodgers. It's Brendan Rodgers.
Oh, that's right. Way, way, way back when.
So 5 of the 20 have all at one stage been in charge of Watford. I mean, I know statistically everybody has been in charge of Watford at some point for a few minutes. That's how it works. I saw a great stat about them the other day. They've had more managers in the last decade than West Ham have had since 1895 when they were formed.
Hey, by the way, do I get double points for Javi Gracia since he was there twice?
Oh, yeah. Go on.
Yes.
Double points. Woo! You get double points. The other
Suck
quiz,
it, Tim.
The other quiz, I've got. You know what? You mentioned Tim. We should bring Tim's mic up for this. Let's go one by one, you and Tim, because I've got the list in front of me, and we'll put in some quiz music in post for you as well. Sure. Roy Hodgson has now been in charge of. Do you know what? I'll count these up. I think it's 26 now because he was level with Claudio Ranieri for most teams and international sides managed for anybody. Then Ranieri got another job, and then Hodgson got another job. But now Hodgson's got another job again, being his old job. So if we go one by one, Danny then Horsey, how many of the teams that Roy Hodgson has managed can you name?
I'll start with Palace, Tim. Your turn.
Inter Milan.
Inter Milan is correct. We should let people know if it's right.
Yeah.
Crystal Palace is obviously right. Inter Milan is right. 2 occasions, so you could have had them twice too.
So I'm gonna take away Tim's bogey team, and I'll say Liverpool.
Yes, that is right. 2010-11.
I tried to forget that. England.
Yes, I tried to forget that. 12-16.
Watford. They tried to forget that as well.
2022, 18 games, 2 wins, diabolical, relegated. Correct.
Okay, this is where it gets interesting. Did he manage Sweden?
Oh, you know what? That's so Scandi close, but wrong.
He was in Sweden though. He was at Malmo.
Yes, he was at Malmo from 1985 to 1989. Incredibly. The old Rodney Marsh connection there. Fulham. Yes, Fulham famously into the was it Europa League or was it UEFA Cup at that point? Final.
I know what Tim was trying to say. He was trying to say Finland. I believe it was Finland.
Yes, he was Finland manager between 2006 and 7.
I think he was actually trying to say another S country. Was it Switzerland?
He was the Switzerland manager.
The best part, you want to know the best part? I love that Horse is not on camera because I guarantee the Wikipedia page is wide open right now on Roy Hodgson.
We work on an honor system on Week in the Tackle,
Yeah.
I have you know. And I trust you both implicitly not to be cheating. But yes, Switzerland, 92 and 95. Took him to the World Cup, I think.
I think what Tim was looking for was the V word. He was looking for Viking.
You are cheating, aren't you?
I swear to God. What was that?
There's no way you're not cheating. Viking?
As soon as Tim pulled Switzerland, I pulled up Wikipedia just to make sure I had one extra one.
Everyone on the YouTube page can see your face looking at you cheating as you're doing this.
Oh, this is the best.
The only surprise
up until
to us,
Viking, I was good. Yeah.
The only surprise to us is that you can read. Yes, Viking is correct. 405. Any others, Tim? Now Danny's out. For being
I've got one that I was gonna pull, and that was just for Andy in New Hampshire, and that was West Brom. I do remember West Brom.
Yes, famously 11 to 12. Any others, Tim?
Yeah, let me note down the time. That was gonna be mine. I don't have any more after that.
He's gonna be like, Tim's like, 1976. He was the manager of Halmstad.
Yeah, of course.
So you could have had Halmstad, 1976, Bristol City, Oddevald. They all sound like characters in Game of Thrones now. Orebo, Malmo.
No. Urebro. I played in Sweden. Urebro. Yeah.
Oh, so you now you're Johnny played in Sweden.
Anytime it's the O with 2 dots, it's a U.
Where were you 2 minutes ago when you could have used that in the quiz?
Yeah.
Where were you then? Johnny B.
Yeah, let's see. I was 5 when he was the manager.
Johnny Big Balls. I wasn't born. Some of us are young.
Alleged.
Neuchâtel Xamax.
Oh, Xamax, Switzerland, yeah.
Oh, okay. And then Switzerland, Inter Milan, Blackburn Rovers, Inter Milan again, Grasshoppers, Copenhagen, Udinese, the UAE national team. What? Viking, Finland, Fulham, Liverpool, West Brom, England under 21, back to England, Crystal Palace, Watford, back to Crystal Palace. There we go. That was today's quiz on the career of Roy Hodgson. I think we all enjoyed it. What should we do now? I do want to ask you about this push thing. I want to ask you about Mitrovic because I do think this is quite interesting. So incredible FA Cup game at the weekend between Fulham and Man U. A proper meltdown from Fulham over a couple of minutes from
3 minutes.
Willian handball, which is a handball. It was a pretty clear handball and was always going to be given. I haven't seen enough angles of Marco Silva. I assume he was swearing at the referee when he was trying to watch the VAR thing.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen enough angles of it, but that's what I've read anyway, but I don't know. And then Mitrovic is the interesting one here. So it's 3 red cards in the space of a few seconds.
Yeah.
Man United score the penalty, then it's the winner. There's another goal after that, but essentially the winner.
Sabitzer.
Sabitzer's little flick. 3-match ban Mitrovic is currently going to get for shoving the referee. Now, if you haven't seen it, the referee is walking Chris Kavanagh back towards the penalty area, having pointed towards the penalty spot, having sent off Willian with one of those kind of cancel that decision red card jobs, and sent off Marco Silva for whatever he said. Mitrovic does that thing where you've been having a row with a friend and you want to grab their attention, like in the pub before they storm off, and you kind of put your sort of fist almost on their upper shoulder above the chest and give him a little kind of nudge back and be like, oh yeah, I'm not done with you yet.
Like a forearm push, yeah.
Like a little forearm push. Yeah. So he's not hit him. I want to try and describe it in a way that people will understand it in case they haven't seen it, because he's not hit him. You know, it's like when, I got hit in the playground today, Daddy. You're like, oh, what happened? It wasn't like someone attacked him with a lead pipe. He just got like a little, let me get your attention, please. Now, I'm not saying it's acceptable. It's not. The red card is appropriate. But Danny, the talk today is that there is going to be a lengthy ban here for what is being described as a barge currently on the referee. It's a 3-match ban, a standard punishment. There is a clamour for more. Now, for a bit of historical reference, Eric Cantona was given an 8-month ban for the famous Kung Fu kick in 95. Paolo Di Canio was given an 11-match ban for the push on referee Paul Alcock when he played for Sheffield Wednesday in 98. Lee Bowyer was given a 7-match ban for being involved in a punch-up with Kieran Dyer on the pitch, and was also given a criminal charge by Northumbria Police, as memory serves. David Prutton was given a 10-match ban for shoving a referee. It was Alan Wiley in 2005. He was playing for Southampton at the time. Ben Thatcher got 8 matches for a similar thing. Joey Barton, 12, and Luis Suarez famously got 10 for the racial abuse of Patrice Evra. So, I think Arthur Masuaku got 6 games for spitting at a West Ham Brighton game. So there's references to numbers, Danny. What did you make to the incident first, and then what is an appropriate punishment? There was a massive clamour today, at least in the sports media, that 3 is not enough.
Yeah, I do not think 3 is enough. All right, so the reference point that Marco Silva was using afterwards, after being sent off in the presser, was previous games with Chris Kavanagh officiating Fulham matches and feeling as though calls did not go their way. Whether it was the management of the game, it was VAR intervention or lack thereof, and that points were dropped, lost from Fulham's perspective. So here's what happens. When you get referees and you feel like you've been hard done, and you find out that they're in charge of matches, and even big matches like this, there's anger and there's frustration before the whistle even blows. And there's trepidation that you are going to get hosed again, right? Fulham by far was the better team. By far was the better team on the day. They started, they managed, they controlled, created better chances, minimized, neutralized, whatever you want to talk about from Manchester United's perspective. Started out the second half, an incredible run, that first 5 minutes, and Issa Diop, his ball, that creates the opportunity for Mitrovic, who I'm still trying to figure out what Luke Shaw is doing. And then the handball happens. When Chris Kavanagh goes over to the monitor, that is when Marco Silva references everything that has previously happened between the team and Kavanagh's the referee, and he enters, or at least he departs, his technical area. We all know it's a big no-no. You can't come anywhere near and intervene in the process of the referee and VAR. So whatever the words were, like, you're f***ing us again. Sorry, Tim. Like something like that, and being out of his technical area and intervening to that moment of VAR, he was shown straight red. And I don't have a problem with that, because I think he knew, despite how frustrated he was, despite inevitably he knew that it was going to be a red card and it was going to be a point to the spot. It was going to be a penalty in favor of Manchester United. He took everything that had been bundled up from the past, brought it to the present, and then took it a step forward. I think when Willian's shown the red, he knows it's happening immediately. I think the moment that they do go into the monitor, that's when he knows he's in trouble. Mitrovic, we know that his passion for the game is at whatever 100 is. He's like at 103. I don't think it helps that his manager reacts in the way it does. I think that amps him up just a little bit more. I think then once he sees one red card to his manager, then another red card to his player, and he knows that subsequently a penalty is being involved, I think he just sees red mist. Now, here's the problem. I've told you, you can say whatever you want to a referee as long as you cover your mouth and you're not demonstrative. You're not throwing like, you can get away with saying a lot to the referee. You can let referees know that the frustration level of players in the heat of the moment can boil over. But there's still a respect that has to be shown. Verbally and demonstratively are two things. But physically, and I know people are going to talk about Bruno, and I still think Bruno was over the line when he pushed, kind of like did this with the AR and the near side in the game a few weeks ago. I thought that should have been looked at, and I thought that crossed the line. That was me. I just thought it crossed the line. I don't think you should ever put your hands on referees, because here's the reality. There are millions of children watching these games. There are millions of children that are going to, like my boys, pull up YouTube and be like, Dad, did you see Mitrovic shove the referee? And I agree with you. It's not like physical assault in which he's going to like throw a punch or he's looking for a fight, but he most definitely, he's the one that started the confrontation. He took it over the line by something you should never do. Put your hands on a referee ever, ever, ever. These are absolute leaders in the industry, these athletes, and they are iconic presence that it's not just adults, because we talk about adult soccer leagues, we talk about indoor leagues, we talk about kids, the abuse that these referees get. Yeah. And then to see at the highest level that a professional athlete is doing this to a referee, that's a data mark in people's heads. So what happens if they go play indoor that night and it's a bad call? Well, Mitrovic did it. So I 100% believe that this is more than 3 games. What that number subsequently is and what the appeal is and what it gets knocked down to, whatever, that's up for interpretation. But I 100% believe that he's looking at it a bare minimum 5 games, if not much, much bigger, because the physicality of that like forearm push to the referee, I thought Kavanaugh handled it perfectly. I thought he stepped back, showed the red, and then got out of backpedaled out of the situation. He wasn't running for his life by any means, but he was trying to separate himself from Mitrovic, who had absolutely crossed the line. And you have to, when things like this happen, there needs to be accountability, there needs to be apologies, and there needs to be an understanding that a line was crossed. And I'm not sure, based on any of the conversations that I've seen so far, and this is just me in my world here in Utah and scouring the internet for information every day, I still haven't seen an apology or an acknowledgement that this was 100% incorrect. Because even in the post-game conversations, it was Silva, oh, I shouldn't have left my technical area, but, and then it was the justification of the actions subsequently after.
Couple of bits on that. I know we haven't got a great deal of time here, but if anyone listening to this doubts Danny's assertion that kids around the world are going to copy this, and also, you know, anyone who plays football over kind of any 5-a-side power league, whatever, is going to copy this sort of behavior to any official, go to watch one of those games and watch the diving. Watch the amount of diving. I went to a game not long ago with like 11-year-olds, and kid was running down the wing, got tripped by the defender. My nephew hacked him down. Good lad. And then it was a nothing challenge. And the winger was like, oh, woe is me. My leg is gone. My life is over. Referee, called the police. And then a yellow card came out and he was like, right, my free kick. Here we go. Off we go. And they're all cheating. The 5-year-olds now are diving. And that's because of a culture of pervasive diving we've allowed into football for the last 20, 25 years, right? It's why people who don't like this game criticize it because we've allowed that to come into a point now where it's never going to go, right? So it definitely influences the lower levels, whatever happens, the higher levels. But what needs to happen here, and we've had this conversation before, so I'll just bullet point it here and we'll do it again at a later date, I'm sure. A total culture change with the refereeing. A total culture change. Firstly, round of applause for Chris Kavanagh. It would have been harder to do it to a Man United team at Old Trafford than the Fulham team, sure. So I'll allow that. I've seen that written a few times. But to send off the manager for coming into his face and swearing at him, superb. Well done for doing that. Sending off Mitrovic moments after sending off Willian and the manager, that's ballsy. That's gutsy. And I'm pleased he did it, because he could have easily gone, all right, calm down, and kept Mitrovic on. He could have done Mitrovic that favor, but why would he? So well done on that score as well. But what we've got here is a total lack of respect for the law, to quote a great song by The Prodigy. And what we need here is to bring that respect in. It's not going to happen with lines around the field to stop parents crossing it. It's not going to happen with slogans and banners. It's going to happen, sorry to go ultra right wing on this, it's going to happen with zero tolerance. It's going to happen with treating the players as they are, which is children who will do anything to get ahead. Anything to get ahead. Anything to get that slight advantage, as they're being paid to do and as they should do. But if that involves pressurizing the referee, talking to the referee, questioning the referee, then it's an immediate red. I love it. I love to see it. I'm always proposing the sin bin as well. I think there was a clear sin bin opportunity for both Mitrovic and Silva here. I think they could be good test cases for the sin bin at a future point. Could Mitrovic not have had 15 minutes there to go and cool off? I don't know. I mean, there's a conversation to be had there, but I think that there are situations where I'd like to see that. But you even go to Wolves Leeds the weekend and Lopetegui getting in the referee's face. Rob Jones, I think it was, decided to stick with the decision. There should be absolutely no speaking to the referee by either team after any decision. Anyone who gets in their face should immediately be sent off. Anyone who swears at the referee should be immediately sent off. And I remember speaking him up into Mark Halsey, the former Premier League referee. And he used to say to players, and feel free to correct me if this is wrong, Mark, if you're listening or anyone on his behalf. But he used to say, you can say anything you want to me. And you said this to me previously as well, as long as it's not demonstrative and public. You said it kind of just there as well. You can call me this, that, or the other, but cover your mouth and come speak to me in my office. Got to go. Got to go, all that. All that's got to go. What it's got to be is the referee's made his decision. There's someone checking it. Don't go near him. You go near him, then it is a red. Don't talk to him. But then that leads on the other side. They give a post-match press conference. They justify their decisions. And then we get a better caliber of referee by bringing better caliber of people doing the job. Those are some of the solutions to this problem. We're out of time, Danny. Do you want to tell us where you are this week? Where can people see you? What are you going to be on?
Yeah, I'm actually heading down to hot Atlanta. We've got U.S. men's national team on the road at Grenada, and we're covering it with TNT, Turner. So we are going to be covering that with the U.S. men's national team. Saturday morning, I am on the first flight back to Salt Lake. I'll call Real Salt Lake against St. Louis City SC. Incredible start, 4 wins, first expansion team to do so. And as soon as that game gets over, I go straight back to the airport and I get a red eye back to Atlanta to catch a flight to Orlando to be back Sunday afternoon, or I guess 10:30 for U.S. men's national team practice. And then we'll have U.S. against El Salvador Monday night. I believe it's 8 Eastern on TNT. Be a part of that coverage. And then I'll be back here a week from now with you, my man.
Good. I'm not working that hard this week because it's international break and I don't like international football. It's a waste of my time and yours. I'll be back next week when the Premier League returns, including a visit to West Ham, Southampton. So I'm going to enjoy this week where there's no West Ham, enjoy next week when there's no West Ham, and then hit the drugs. See you next time.